They say your past defines you. That's a lie. Your past doesn't define you, it refines you. Welcome to the Mile Marker Mindset Podcast, where real stories meet real change. Hosted by Mark Keith, a voice forged by the miles and refined by the mindset. Shift your mindset. Shift your life. Let's go to work.
Let's get real for a minute here, all right? There are nights when motivation is nowhere to be found. I'm talking about those evenings when my to-do list is stacked with business tasks, planning, admin work, podcast planning, all of it. But you know what? I'm just so wiped by the end of the day that I just don't do any of it. Instead, I find myself scrolling on my phone, getting nothing productive done. Or worse, I look to everything I need to do and get completely overwhelmed and end up doing none of it. Then comes the frustration, the ever familiar frustration. I'm mad at myself for not getting after it because I feel like I wasted my time. Now, sometimes taking a break is the right move, don't get me wrong. But if I'm just trying to dodge a little discomfort or waiting to feel motivated, that's not a good enough reason to stall. It's just not. And honestly, the same thing happens with food. My wife preps these amazing healthy meals for the truck, real fuel, not junk. She takes a lot of time planning it. She does a great job. She'll spend the evenings before I have to leave out for the week cooking and preparing whatever it is that she's making and portioning everything out in containers so I have good food to eat for the week. Meanwhile, I finish all the tasks needed to get myself ready for the week on the road. They are wholesome, filling meals that give me energy and keep me healthy. But when I hit a truck stop, it is all too easy to get candy and chips and fast food. Man, I'll walk in for fuel and walk out with a bag of junk that I know was going to make me feel sluggish. And I'll tell you, it feels good in the moment. It sure tastes good going down, but I regret it an hour later every single time. And honestly, I've gained weight back because of that. I lost 50 pounds through intermittent fasting and trying to eat better, and I've gained about half of it back because of that habit. I'll tell you, it's a battle. And I'm not perfect, but at least I own it. I'd rather be honest about it than make excuses or pretend it's not happening. But this all comes back to what's your purpose? It has to be for you because you can only change when your desire to change is greater than your desire to remain the same. I'm talking about that deep personal purpose is the only thing strong enough to anchor you when the feeling is gone, when the motivation leaves. And that is why you can't rely on motivation. You need the one thing that shows up every time, no matter what. You need something called discipline. I'm Mark Keith. This is a Mile Marker Mindset Podcast. Today, we're breaking down why discipline beats motivation and how small steps create big miles through the compound effects, and why the unglamorous work you do when nobody's watching is actually what changes everything. Let me tell you a secret. Here's the truth. Motivation, it's a liar. Motivation tells you that you start the workout routine on Monday. Motivation promises you'll meal prep this weekend. Motivation swears you'll finally have that difficult conversation with your spouse when the time feels right. But then Monday comes, you're feeling tired, the weekend gets busy, and the right time never arrives. I see this all the time in trucking. New drivers show up full of motivation. They are pumped up, excited, ready to roll. And they're going to be the best driver the company has ever seen. You know the type. They're going to make a pile of money, see the country really live that dream. But then reality hits hard and fast. It's raining, and they're out at a truck stop parking lot doing a pre-trip inspection at 4 a.m. Or the dispatcher gives them a load that makes no sense. Equipment breaks down at the worst possible time. Other drivers are cutting them off in traffic. Or those four-wheelers are playing dangerous games, brake checking a truck because they think the risk is worth some potential insurance payout. Never mind that everything's caught on camera. Or oftentimes someone won't let you merge even though your turn signal's been on for 2 miles. Yes, that happened to me recently. So instead, they decide to pass you on the shoulder or the grass. It's pretty wild out there doing this job, I tell you what. But the drivers who rely on motivation, they usually don't last 6 months. But the ones who stick around, the ones that make it, the biggest difference is they own their situation. They own it. They don't make excuses or try to justify their failures by blaming the dispatcher, a four wheeler, the weather, or broken equipment. There are real reasons things go wrong. Absolutely. That's life, right? But excuses and justifications are a choice. There's a difference between real reasons and excuses and justifications. A person who relies on motivation, who has an attitude of entitlement, is always looking for an external cause to blame. But a person of discipline takes full accountability. They know that even when the situation isn't their fault, their response is always their responsibility. They understand that you can only change for yourself. I learned that the hard way in my first marriage. I changed things about myself, like how I acted, what I prioritized, who I spent time with. But the reality was, I wasn't changing for me. I was doing it for her. So, guess what? It didn't last. I went right back to who I actually was because the change wasn't rooted in my own desires. So she would say, "Oh, you've changed." No, I didn't change like you think I did. I went back to who I actually was because the change wasn't real. Just what you wanted. It was a persona, it was a representative, it was acting, is what it was, to try and appease somebody else, which again isn't true change. So when you try to change for someone else, you're not really changing, right? You're just acting. And eventually, that act, just like for me, it got exhausting, and you eventually revert back to who you really are. Real change happens when your desire to change becomes greater than your desire to remain the same. That's the formula. It's that easy. At least it sounds easy, right? And here's something else my life coaching teacher drilled into me: practice doesn't make perfect. Despite what you always hear, practice doesn't make perfect, but practice makes you permanently better than you were before. And that's the goal. Not perfection, but permanent improvement. Small, consistent progress that compounds over time. There's so many people in this trucking industry and others that have what my wife likes to call big league dreams, but with a backyard effort. They don't understand the work that it takes to get that end result. They just want what's easy. That small, consistent progress over time is what gets you there with any goal. So, big league effort, big league results. Backyard effort, backyard results. That's simple. Your life is the sum results of the effort and actions that you put into it. Remember, you reap what you sow. When you look at my world in the trucking industry, a lot of people underestimate the effort required to just keep us, and especially everybody else around us, safe. Because look, I want to get home to my family safely just as much as I want you to get safely home to yours. A lot of people think driving a truck isn't that hard. They figure, what's the big deal? You're just sitting there, right? They don't understand the mental and physical toll this job really takes on you. You have to be laser focused for up to 14 hours a day, legally allowed to drive up to 11 of those hours. And by the way, you're not just watching what you're doing, it's more about constantly scanning and predicting what everyone else is doing. I'm talking about every car that merges without looking, every distracted driver on their phone, every aggressive trucker who thinks a road belongs to them. It's exhausting. The hardest part, honestly, sometimes is just getting up in the morning when you're bone tired and you just want to sleep. But the work has to get done because guess what? If I don't work, I don't get paid. There's no salary safety net out here. No work, no check. And that reality forces you to confront the hard truth. Discipline is what separates people who just use tools from those who master them. Motivation is fleeting, it comes and goes like the weather. Discipline is what gets you out of bed, gets the job done, and keeps you moving forward when nobody's watching and nobody cares. That's the difference maker right there. Now, here's where this gets interesting because discipline by itself isn't enough. You need to understand how discipline creates results through what I call the compound effect. Picture this. Maybe you've heard this story before. If you have, that's okay. You're about to hear it again. It's a good story. You're standing on a deck of a massive cargo ship that's completely dead in the water. The engines have been down for days, costing the ship company thousands of dollars every hour it sits idle. Multiple mechanics have tried everything they can think of, torn apart systems, replaced parts, run diagnostic after diagnostic. Nothing works. The ship's not going anywhere. But then an old mechanic shows up. He doesn't say much. He just walks around the engine room for about 10 minutes, listening carefully, feeling different parts of the machinery with his hands. Finally, he stops on one specific spot, pulls out a hammer, and gives one precise tap to a particular bolt. Then the engine roars to life. A few days later, the shipping company gets his bill $65,000. They're outraged. $65,000 for 15 minutes of work? Are you kidding me? Just for hitting a one bolt with a hammer? Oh my gosh. Then the old mechanic sends them an itemized invoice. Tapping the bolt with hammer, $5. Knowing which bolt to tap, $64,995. The story illustrates everything about how the compound effect actually works in real life. That mechanic didn't just wake up one day knowing which bolt to hit. He probably spent decades learning his craft, years of trial and error, years of hitting the wrong bolts and learning from his mistakes, years of studying different types of engines, different problems, different solutions across hundreds of ships. Every single day, he was adding a small piece to his knowledge base, gaining that wisdom because applied knowledge is what? Wisdom. So he gained that wisdom from all those mistakes and all the things he had to learn. Every mistake taught him something valuable. Every success confirmed a hypothesis to him. Every engine he fixed added to his mental database. All those small learning experiences, most of them frankly boring, unglamorous, and repetitive, compounded over time until he became the person who could solve a problem that stumped nearly everyone else. So here's the thing, that shipping company wasn't paying $65,000 for 15 minutes of work. They were paying for the 30 to 40 years of disciplined learning that made those 15 minutes possible. They were paying for all the times he showed up when he didn't feel like it, all the engines he studied when he was tired, all the mistakes he made early in his career. And those taught him what not to do. That's the compound effect in action. Small, consistent actions done over time without immediate visible results eventually create expertise that looks like magic to the people that don't do the work. I tell you, I see this principle play out every single day in trucking. The difference between a professional driver and what we call a steering wheel holder isn't dramatic. And for listeners outside of trucking, think of a steering wheel holder as the opposite of a disciplined professional in any field. They're present but not engaged. They are just going through the motions, meeting the bare minimum to collect a paycheck, and constantly looking for the easiest way instead of putting in that big league effort we talked about. It's not one big decision or one moment of brilliance, it's thousands of small decisions made correctly consistently over time. It's doing your pre trip inspection the right way every single morning, even when you're running late. It's checking your mirrors every 8 to 10 seconds without thinking about it. It's maintaining your following distance even when aggressive drivers take advantage of your space, which happens a lot. It's planning your fuel stops to avoid running low on fuel. It's keeping your paperwork organized so you're not scrambling at weigh stations, because let me tell you, that does not look good. Quick way to get a DOT inspection there. None of this, by the way, is exciting, and none of it makes for good Instagram content or TikTok or anything else. But over months and years, those small disciplined actions compound into a driver who rarely has accidents, rarely gets violations, and rarely breaks down due to poor maintenance and makes good money because they're reliable and efficient. The drivers that don't make it, they're waiting for the big moment, the big breakthrough, the surge of motivation that will suddenly make them great at this job. They skip pre trip inspections when they're in a hurry. They push their hours of service because they want to make one more delivery. They ignore weird noises from the truck because they don't want to deal with maintenance. They eat garbage food when it's convenient. And then one day something goes wrong, a major breakdown because they miss signs of trouble, an accident because their attention drifted at the wrong moment, a violation because they pushed too hard on their hours, a health crisis because of years of poor eating finally caught up with them. Small, undisciplined actions also compound, but in the wrong direction. Let me tell you about a time when I learned this lesson the hard way. This was a few years back working for a previous company. The process for picking up a trailer from this vendor is entirely self service, at least after signing the necessary paperwork in the shipping office. There's no one in a guard shack to verify your seal nor confirm you have the correct trailer. The responsibility is solely yours. This means you are on your own to drop off the empty trailer in the correct area, locate the loaded one, verify it matches the documentation, complete your pre trip inspection, and finally plan your route. Even locating the loaded trailer, let alone verifying it, proved to be an issue one particular evening. See, I had a routine for this, a system. Same order every time. Exterior walk around, interior checks. Then I double check on my paperwork against the trailer number and seal number to make sure everything matches. It takes maybe 5 minutes if I'm thorough, maybe three if I hustle. Really not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. But this particular night, I was short on time. I was tired. It was dark. Yes, I had my flashlight. I can make all kinds of excuses, but I wanted to get where I wanted to park. Maybe I want to get a decent meal before everything closed, or get extra rest before the next day's run, whatever the case. So I cut corners and I glanced at the trailer number. It looked about right. I hooked up without doing my full verification routine. The load was supposed to be heavy, so I needed to hit a CAT scale to make sure I wasn't overweight. So the nearest CAT scale was about 2.5 to 3 hours away, mostly backcountry roads. Not ideal, but necessary. It's fine. About that time I'm pulling onto the scale, I realized something's wrong. I checked the weight readout and I'm drastically underweight from where I usually am with loads from this vendor, usually quite heavy. Nearly simultaneously, my phone rings. And that's my fleet manager. She got a call from the vendor. Apparently, I grabbed the wrong trailer. Apparently, I grabbed an empty trailer. So, yeah, I had to drive 2.5 to 3 hours back to the vendor, swap up for the correct trailer, and then face whatever disciplinary action came from my company along with whatever other consequences there were. The load was late. The customer was mad. My fleet manager had to do damage control. A mere 5 minute lapse in my routine resulted in significant consequences. Over 5 extra hours of driving, covering the distance back to my starting point, the associated fuel and rescale costs for my company, and the professional humiliation and disciplinary write up that was added to my file. When my fleet manager asked me what happened, I didn't make excuses. I owned it completely. I told her I was running short on time. I wanted to get where I was going. And frankly, I got out of my routine. That mistake, as painful as it was a crucial lesson. My routine works regardless of my emotional state. Discipline and emotion are separate. The system is designed precisely for those moments when I'm not at my best, when I'm tired, rushed, frustrated, or distracted. That's when I need it most. The primary takeaway here is to follow the routine, period. So I learned from it. Here's the thing about that mistake, though. It was completely preventable and obviously 100% my fault. Because, again, the compound effect works in both ways. All those times I did follow my routine, built the habit, built the expertise, kept me out of trouble. But the one time I broke the routine thinking I could skip it just this once, maybe that was complacency, fatigue, mind elsewhere, who knows? But that's a negative compound effect kicked in. One small, undisciplined decision that maybe saved me 3 minutes in the moment cost me 5 hours, a dip in my professional reputation, and a mark on my record. That's compound interest working against you instead of for you. Since that day, when I feel rushed or pressured to skip steps, I do the opposite. I slow down. I force myself to follow the routine even more carefully because I learned that being late by 5 minutes is always better than being wrong and having to fix it for 5 hours. So, how do you actually build discipline that works regardless of how you feel? How do you create systems that function when motivation has completely abandoned you? Let me show you how this works in practice, starting with something really simple: making your bed. Every morning when I wake up in my sleeper cab, the first thing I do is make my bed. It takes maybe 5 minutes, sometimes less than a minute if I'm just straightening it out. Really not a big deal. Even when I load up my truck to leave for the week, before I even fire up my engine, I make my bed properly. I learned this as a principle from retired Navy Admiral McCraven, who famously said, "If you don't do anything else, at least make your bed." But here's why I really do it: it's not because it makes me feel accomplished or inspires me. I do it because it's practical and prevents a problem later. If I don't make my bed, I end up piling stuff on it throughout the day: work papers, my laptop, snacks, tools, whatever I'm dealing with. Then, when I'm ready to sleep, I have to move it all again. And when I wake up, I have to move it all again just to make the bed. So I'm handling the same items multiple times unnecessarily. Make the bed once, it's done. Keep it made, and I can just set things on it and move them aside in one motion when I need to sleep. It's efficient. That's what I mean about the unglamorous reality of discipline. I'm not making my bed because it's inspiring or because some motivational speaker told me to. No, I'm making it because it solves a practical problem and creates a foundation for the rest of my routines. But here's what happened over time that I didn't expect: that 5 minute routine became an anchor for other disciplined behaviors. When you start your day by doing one thing that's organized and intentional, it's easier psychologically to do the next disciplined thing: make the bed, then do my stretches, and then I wash my face and brush my teeth. After I get cleaned up, then I get dressed properly, followed by my pre trip inspection. After the pre trip, then I review my route plan for the day, so on and so forth. Each small disciplined action makes the next one easier. As you all know, I'm a driver for Walmart. And at Walmart, during onboarding, one of the things they told us about pre trip inspections, they said it in that thick South Carolina drawl that makes everything sound more serious. I'm not going to do it because it won't sound right. But you've got to have a routine, driver. You've got to have a routine. And it's true. When you get knocked out of your routine and when you get rushed and it breaks your flow, you make mistakes. We humans are creatures of habit. In a lot of ways, that serves us well. That's why children who don't have structure and discipline often have behavioral issues. They need predictability and routine to feel secure and function well. When I break my routine, I make mistakes. When I get in a rush, which breaks my routine, I make mistakes. The wrong trailer incident proved that beyond any shadow of a doubt. My current pre trip routine takes about the same time every day, same order every time. Exterior walk around first, checking tires, lights, coupling, glad hands, airlines, landing gear. Then interior checks, gauges, warning lights, brake system, all the cab controls. Then the paperwork verification, matching the trailer and the seal number against what's on my bills. Keep in mind that these are just examples of what is included. The full list is extensive, includes many more checks. These are just examples. The whole thing is systematic and methodical, and it works whether I feel like doing it or not, whether I'm motivated or not, whether I'm excited about the day ahead or dreading it. The routine operates independently of my emotions. Now, let me be clear about something. I am not perfect at this. There are nights when I park and I know I have work to do on the business, podcast preps, admin tasks, planning for the next day, whatever it is. I'm so tired that I don't do any of it. I end up scrolling on my phone, frankly accomplishing nothing productive. Or I look at my whole to do list, get overwhelmed, and then just shut down completely. Then I get frustrated with myself for wasting time. And I'm telling you this because discipline isn't about being perfect, it's about having a system you can return to when you fall off track. It's about recognizing when you're operating on motivation, which is failing, versus discipline, which is your anchor point. When I catch myself in that scrolling instead of working pattern, I don't beat myself up for an hour about how undisciplined I am. That's just more wasted time. Instead, I ask, what's the smallest action I could take right now? Sometimes it's literally just opening the right document, just getting the guitar out of the case, or just putting in the workout clothes, just opening my meal prep container instead of walking into the truck stop. The smallest next discipline action breaks a paralysis and gets a compound effect working in your favor again. Here's something that amplified my discipline dramatically, learning exactly how long things actually take. For me, getting from alarm goes off to ready to preach it, plan, and roll out is about 30 minutes on average when I'm in the truck. I know this because I've timed it out, not obsessively, but I have a reliable estimate. Okay, I wake up, make my bed, about 1 to 2 minutes, do my stretches, 8 to 15 minutes, depending. Wash my face, brush my teeth, 3 to 4 minutes, get fully dressed, 3 to 4 minutes. All meanwhile making my coffee, which is about 2 minutes. Quick tidying up at the cab, about 2 to 3 minutes. Review route plan, 3 to 5 minutes. Add it up, that's roughly about 30 minutes. Why does this matter? Because when you know your true timing, you can work backwards and set realistic expectations. If I need to leave at 6 a.m., I set my alarm for 5:30, not 5:45, hoping I can rush through everything, not 5:15, giving me more time than I need and I end up wasting it, because that definitely happens. It's a whole mental thing. I've had to adjust this over time. When I started having some back and hip issues, my stretching routine got a bit longer, which is now why it's more 12 to 15 minutes in the morning. So I adjusted my wake up time earlier because of that difference. In reality, it's flexible. This prevents one of the biggest discipline killers, getting rushed. When you get rushed, you make mistakes. When you're scrambling because you overslept or underestimated, you start cutting corners. You skip steps. You break your routine. And that's when things go wrong. I've timed all the major components of my job. Pre trip inspection, 15 to 20 minutes of thorough fueling up, 10 to 15 minutes depending on pump speed and payment processing, backing into a tight dock anywhere between 2 to 5 minutes, depending on situation, maybe more. Most companies call this your ETA, estimated time of availability, or ETD, estimated time of departure. Note, ETA is not as an estimated time of arrival. And there's a reason for that too. Companies want to know when you'll be ready for your next tasking or your next dispatch with most things like fuel, bathroom, shower, pre, post trip meals, etc., all considered and factored in. Most companies factor in all that time with an average speed of 50 miles per hour for whatever the mileage is, with some exceptions, of course. And by the way, this isn't obsessive, it's practical. For example, dispatcher asks, can you make a 2 p.m. appointment that's 200 miles away? I can do the actual math. Say it's 10 a.m. I need 20 minutes to finish up whatever it is I'm doing, 3 hours of drive time, 15 minutes for a pre trip, 10 minutes to find parking and back in. It's about 3 hours and 45 minutes minimum. If I leave in the next 10 minutes, I'll be there by 150 with a small buffer. Or I can simplify it to 200 miles divided by 50 miles per hour equals 4 hours. Yeah, I can make it. Now understand that calculated time is my bare minimum, but to be sure I'm never scrambling and traffic and accidents and all kinds of delays happen, I intentionally build in a cushion. As the old saying goes, if you're not early, you're late. So I always aim for my true estimated time of arrival in this case, because I'm talking about making an appointment on time here, to be at least 15 minutes before the required appointment time. A small disciplined buffer is what protects me from that unexpected traffic, a slow fuel pump, or a backed up dock, or any number of things. That detailed timing tells me when I can be there. The 15-minute buffer tells me when I should plan to be there to guarantee professional performance. It's not a contradiction, it's a difference between knowing the rule and mastering the system. Drivers who don't track their real timing, they overpromise and then have to speed, cut corners, or blow past regulations to make it happen. Or they constantly run late and damage their professional reputation, and really neither option is sustainable in this industry. And by the way, I completely understand. The thought of meticulously tracking task duration and being ruthlessly honest about it can feel like a monumental chore, a discipline I still grapple with myself. It carries a psychological burden to look at a task you've mentally pegged for a quick 30-minute sprint, getting ready to go to work, go out for the night, clearing your inbox, drafting a quick email, or even just preparing breakfast, and have to concede that in reality, it routinely consumes a full hour or more to complete those tasks. Let me ask you this. Are there areas in your life where you seem to always run late, fashionably late, if you will? Maybe that's the start of your workday, or maybe for dates at night, meetups with friends, or kids' games on the weekend. Identifying those areas is the first step toward reshaping those habits. But this difficult, almost painful honesty is not just about time management. It's a foundational, crucial piece of building authentic personal discipline and a routine that actually works in the real world. Ignoring this reality is the number one reason routines crumble. You can't budget for fantasy. So, here's my direct, actionable challenge for you starting today. I want you to identify 3 key tasks. Pick 3 of your most common or reoccurring daily or weekly tasks. These activities should be things that you consistently feel you spend too much time on, or that always seem to throw your schedule off track. They could range from the mundane, like getting ready in the morning and making dinner, commuting, to core professional stuff like tackling your email inbox, processing meeting notes, or working on your primary creative output, whatever that may be. And time them ruthlessly. For the next 3 consecutive days, use a stopwatch, your phone, a watch, or a timer app, or whatever, and grab a notebook and track the actual start and stop time of each of these 3 tasks. Be meticulous. Time the entire process, start to finish, including the inevitable distractions, the coffee refills, the small breaks you take. Don't estimate, capture the hard data. And then analyze the data. At the end of the 3 days, look at the numbers. Calculate the average time each task took. You might be genuinely shocked at the collective data you've amassed. You might discover that your 15-minute email check is actually a 45-minute distraction sink, or that your morning routine takes 20 minutes longer than you budgeted for. Collected data is not a judgment. It's your invaluable first step toward building a better, more realistic, and sustainable routine. Armed with truth, you can now budget your time based on facts, not hopeful projections, which is the only way to establish a powerful, lasting routine and truly take control of your day. The timing awareness is a perfect example of how small, disciplined habits compound into big results. Spending 10 seconds to note how long something took seems pointless in the moment. I get it. But over time, that data becomes incredibly valuable decision making information that saves you from stress, mistakes, and frankly, poor commitments. That's a crucial distinction between using the tools and being controlled by the tools. In our modern world, this is where a lot of people discipline completely falls apart. You're the driver of the truck, not the GPS. But you'd be shocked how many drivers forget this. I use three different GPS systems in my truck. I have my in cab company GPS for truck specific routing and company preferences. I have my Garmin diesel GPS, which is specifically designed for commercial motor vehicles and avoids low bridges, weight restrictions, and the like. And then I use Google Maps, which, by the way, does not have truck routing, but I use it primarily for real time traffic monitoring because it's pretty accurate and to the minute. But behind my driver's seat, I also have a physical atlas. Yes, an actual atlas. And I'll be honest, I can't remember the last time I pulled it out and used it directly, but I keep it there as a backup because I know several experienced drivers who use their atlas regularly. And honestly, I respect that wisdom. More importantly, I learned to read an atlas when I was younger, and I give due credit when necessary here. That is a skill my mom taught me alongside those stressful Chicago Blizzard driving lessons when I was younger. And I still use those same spatial reasoning and route planning skills when I'm cross referencing my digital maps. So the thing is, people rely way too much on technology, no matter what the tool is: GPS, AI, apps, automation, whatever. It's only as good as the person using it. A tool doesn't think for you, doesn't make decisions. It processes inputs and gives outputs based on algorithms and databases. So many times I hear stories like, why did you end up in a forest preserve? How did you end up in a residential street where trucks aren't allowed? Common response that people say, I was following my GPS. That's a fundamental mistake. It's like assuming the navigation app was literally steering your truck. You are the captain of your ship, and the GPS is just a tool. Maybe you were following the GPS, but you were actually being the steering wheel holder and the one controlling the brake and throttle. You were not just following the GPS. Instead, you let the GPS drive the truck and were basically just along for the ride into places you shouldn't be with the truck. In modern semi trucks, there are so many sensors and cameras. I personally try to turn off as many of those automated systems as I possibly can, which honestly isn't many, because while the company limits what I can disable, I know how to operate my commercial motor vehicle without depending on those. There are so many so called safety features already, with more constantly being added. In fact, it almost raises the question, who's actually driving the truck? Are all of your sensors and automated systems telling you what to do while you just hold the wheel? Or are you using those sensors as information while you remain in control of the vehicle? That's the distinction between a professional truck driver and a steering wheel holder. So, again, are you letting the sensors and cameras drive the truck while your GPS routes you into places you shouldn't be? Or are you actually driving with a route plan using your GPS as a tool and a guide rather than an authority? The same principle applies everywhere. You either control your tools or they control you. And people who let their tools control them never develop real expertise. They never build up that deep knowledge that comes from disciplined practice and intentional learning. You have to be smarter than your tools. You have to control your tools, not let them control you. Every time somebody walks around with their head buried in their phone, you're being controlled by a device. Every time somebody gets outraged because they're told to be by social media, television, or news media, you are being controlled by information systems. Your phone, TV, computer, at the end of the day, those are all just tools. You are supposed to control them, not the other way around. Let's talk about AI. It's an essential tool, honestly, for this podcast and my business, and I primarily use it for helping me organize my ideas and content. And while I leverage AI and other platforms to strengthen areas where I might lack, such as improving grammar, structure, formatting, the final output is always rooted in my own input and concepts. Take this episode, for instance. It was created based on follow up questions from my initial ideas, structured to fit the desired episode format, and then personally edited by me to ensure my voice and tone are authentic. The information age and AI advancements are great tools, especially if used responsibly and with discipline. Listen, real talk here. I need to talk about why I'm doing all this in the first place, because the why is what makes discipline sustainable over years, not just weeks or months. My reason for the mile marker mindset, for this podcast, the coaching practice, the books, for all of it, at the root, it comes down to this. I was carried by Jesus through incredibly tough times in my life. Now, he has called on me to help others who are going through similar struggles, providing the support I once lacked. That's my purpose. That's the unshakable anchor I keep in front of me when my discipline gets hard. And it matters to me because a lot of people are lost in life with no direction and no one to guide them. I know it because I was one of them. And it's only because of my faith I was able to finally find my way through and learn the things I needed to learn to get my life back on track. Now, I'm certainly not perfect, but I'm always learning. And I was blessed, and I want to bless others with what I've learned. And you know what? They say the wisdom would be wasted on the young. And there's truth to that because you have to experience life to gain the wisdom and understanding that comes later. That's largely why my target audience are people willing to listen and learn and who actually want to change and no longer think they already know everything because we don't. And you learn that with time and wisdom. And again, applied knowledge is wisdom. So you get that wisdom over time. So it's easy to say, I wish I had someone tell me this or that when I was younger. But if I hadn't gone through the journey myself, I wouldn't be here to help pay it forward to help somebody else on their journey. One could argue that people have to go through their journey on their own to figure it out, and maybe there's some truth to that. What if there's somebody else who's been there before who can hold your hand and help you through it? Not just to give you words and tell you what to do, but actually be with you on that journey. Now, I had that on and off throughout my life, but definitely not consistently. And I think having that consistent guidance would have helped my process move a lot more efficiently. You know what? That's why I'm here. I want to be that person for whatever you're going through. That has become my purpose and my calling. My faith is my work. Without it, and I'm being completely honest here, I don't know where I'd be in my life. I'd still likely be unwilling to surrender and be obedient to the Lord, which means I wouldn't have been able to move my life forward and I would have been stuck where I was for a long time. Now, I need to make it clear my life got back on track only through Him. I take no credit and claim no glory for this. Frankly, as it is not rightfully mine to have. And I had to learn these Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways, submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. And Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. I used to think I knew what was best for myself, but that proved to be a mistake time and time again. My life improved when I began trusting more in Jesus, surrendering my life to Him and trusting Him and having that faith, which led to better decisions than I had made before. And a key part of this is accepting the uncertainty of my life's path and focusing on what truly holds value for me. The pivotal advice that set me on the right path with this was, at least in part, identify your core values. Okay. I'm not talking about material possessions like a car or a TV. Those can be lost, as can jobs. The deep down fundamental principles of who you are, stripped down everything temporary, your career, trivial preferences like music or sports teams, any possession that can be taken from you. Once you've stripped away all that is superficial in your life, you must build your life from that bedrock. Think of it as like a house, okay? A foundation is built with strong materials, concrete, rebar, and wood framing protected by moisture barriers. It is designed to be difficult to change later, and the entire structure of the house is built upon it. You are no different. Look, I'm a Christian conservative because of my values, not the other way around. Fundamentally, intrinsically, I am a Christian and I am conservative, and those are reflections of things I believe about life, truth, purpose, responsibility, and frankly, how the world works. It's like my worldview, if you will. A lot of people get wrapped up in identity politics, and it's called that for a reason because it's not actually your identity. You should never identify with something that can change at the drop of a hat because the moment it does, you lose your sense of self and you lose your identity. That's why there's so many people that are lost right now. By the way, to all my single listeners, here's a crucial piece of advice free of charge. Once you've clearly identified your core values, and if you're actively looking for a serious relationship, you'll have a precise blueprint for the ideal partner. The reason is simple: a long term relationship with a fundamental disconnect in core values is rarely sustainable. Just like a house, the foundation of a relationship needs to be unified for lasting strength. Attempting to integrate a wildly different core value approach almost guarantees extensive and costly repairs for both partners down the road. And I'll dedicate a future episode to this topic, but the underlying principle remains valid. Listen, my testimony is his triumph. I rely on him, ensuring I stick to discipline that gets the job done long after the initial feeling of motivation has faded. I do my best to be his faithful, obedient servant, and to him alone goes the glory. At the end of the day, my decisions come down to this: God loves me enough, loves all of us enough, that I know he won't let me down. Whatever I do to try and mess up my life, as long as I listen and I am obedient, he'll get me back on track every time. That's my choice. That's my free will. Seriously, I pour my heart into this podcast and business. I've been through these struggles myself, so I can genuinely guide you to the other side. This isn't about that flashy follow your passion or live your dream stuff you hear all the time. No. It's just good, old fashioned, essential work, the kind of stuff that needs to get done. Even if it's not super exciting, and honestly, most of it probably isn't, but it's essential. If I had waited for all the stars to align, for everything to feel perfect, I probably never would have started it. It took my friends and family pushing me to get it done, and for me to stop coming up with excuses and just do it. You don't wait for the perfect time or when you feel motivated. Because if you do, there's a very low likelihood of it ever happening if you wait for that. It doesn't matter what it is: starting a business, starting a workout plan, changing your diet. By the way, when I say diet, I don't mean some temporary restriction. I mean a sustainable lifestyle change in how you eat. Diets fail because they're built on motivation, not discipline. Everything compounds. Your disciplined actions compound into growth. Your undisciplined actions compound into problems. There is no neutral. There's always moving in one direction or the other. But no matter which direction you move in, God always has your back and will be there for you. Now, let me address something practical because this is where the rubber meets the road for most people. How do you handle competing priorities when everything feels urgent? In trucking, there's this concept we call hurry up and wait. You rush to make an appointment, pushing hard to get there on time, driving as efficiently and safely as the law allows. Then you arrive and you wait, sometimes for hours. They're not ready for you. The dock is backed up. They can't find your paperwork. There's some issue with the product. Whatever it is, you're sitting and waiting. Meanwhile, your driving clock is ticking. Your next delivery appointment is getting closer. You are burning time you could be using productively. And there is nothing you could do about it except wait. It is what it is. Drive, truck, cash, check, right? Don't let it ruin your peace. Just go with it. This is where discipline really shows up versus motivation. When you've been sitting there for 3 hours and now you suddenly have to drive, when you're mentally fatigued and physically stiff, when you're frustrated about delays, but you have to perform your job safely and professionally, when things aren't going according to plan, but the work still has to get done anyway, motivation doesn't help you in those moments. Motivation has long since left the building. Discipline says, this is part of the job. So, how do I handle it professionally and keep moving forward? It's a common theme here, right? Keep moving forward. I've learned to use this waiting time productively instead of stewing in frustration. I can catch up on paperwork, plan my next route, do some stretches, work on podcast content, handle business emails, and some administrative tasks. The waiting time doesn't disappear, but it doesn't have to be wasted time either. For prioritizing what actually matters, I like to use Stephen Covey's time management matrix, the 4 quadrants. It helps you figure out what's urgent versus important, what can be delegated, and what can just be eliminated. It's a practical way of analyzing what's actually has to be done versus what just feels like it needs to be done. Here's the truth. Urgency is subjective. What feels urgent to me probably isn't urgent to, say, my wife, and vice versa. It's all about finding that balance and being honest about what truly matters versus what's just noise. And there's a lot of just noise out there. I'm a truck driver. I'm only home a day or 2 a week. Not a whole lot of time to do stuff around the house and family stuff. So when I'm home, I have limited time. I need to work on business stuff, house maintenance stuff needs to get done. Plus, of course, be present for my wife and handle family responsibilities. And I'll be honest, finding that balance is genuinely difficult. And I don't have a perfect answer. It's something I continue to work on. But what I've learned is that I need to take breaks from the computer work and handle physical tasks around the house. Not just because those tasks need doing, but because, frankly, it's not healthy to sit in front of a screen all day anyway. Plus, as my wife has wisely pointed out multiple times, when I get stuck on something mentally, I just need to get up and take a little break from it. Like she recommended to me the other day, if you're stuck, go pick up the dog poop in the yard and walk around. Maybe she's just trying to get me to do it. I don't know. But I tell you what, it was effective. What happened was I was frustrated, stuck on a problem, spinning my wheels. And whatever it is I was working on, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. So I went outside, cleaned up the yard, and walked around for 10, 15 minutes. And the solution came to me while I was moving around outside. Turns out she was right. Don't tell her I said that. The point is, discipline includes knowing when to step away. It's not just about grinding harder. It's about having systems that include rest, breaks, and variety so you can sustain the work over time. Here's what I want you to remember from this episode. Small steps create big miles. Discipline beats motivation every single time. The work that matters most happens when nobody's watching. You don't need some dramatic transformation moment. You don't need to wait for a surge of motivation. And you don't need perfect conditions. You need consistent, small improvements that compound over time. The ship mechanic didn't become valuable because of one moment of inspiration or brilliant insight. No, he became valuable because of decades of disciplined learning and practice. That $65,000 wasn't just for tapping a bolt. It was for knowing which bolt to tap. And that knowledge and that wisdom, again, applied knowledge is wisdom, That wisdom came from years of trial and error, years of showing up when he didn't feel like it, years of small learning experiences adding up and then genuine expertise. That's available to you, not overnight, not in a week, but through consistent discipline over time. Look, your assignment this week is simple. Pick one small thing you can do in 5 minutes or less, whatever it is, something that moves you toward who you want to become. Maybe it's making your bed every morning, like I was talking about. Maybe it's doing 5 minutes of stretches. Maybe it's prepping one healthy meal. Maybe it's turning off your phone for the first 30 minutes after you wake up. By the way, it's something else I've had realized I need to do. Maybe it's spending 5 minutes reviewing your day before bed. Commit to your chosen action for the next 7 days. Doing it daily, regardless of how you feel, your motivation level, or convenience. Soon, that consistent effort will transform into a healthy new habit in 3 weeks, leading to a healthy new lifestyle change in 3 months, on average. Don't try to overhaul your entire life on this, all right? Don't create some massive transformation plan with 17 new habits. Just pick one small thing, do it consistently. Remember, practice doesn't make you perfect. Practice makes you permanently better. Compounded over time creates transformations that look like magic to the people that didn't do the work. Remember, your past doesn't have to define you. Instead, be the tool that refines you. Past experiences to cultivate a lasting discipline that will carry you toward a brighter future long after the initial motivation fades. Shifting your mindset is a catalyst that changes everything. Shift your mindset and you shift your life. Hey, are you stuck in a rut? I'm here to be your partner along this journey, walking with you instead of just telling you all the answers. Send me an email at coaching@milemarkermindset.com. Whatever you're going through, let's tackle it together. And if you found this content helpful, we'd greatly appreciate a solid review, a subscription, and a share. And by the way, follow us, Mile Marker Mindset, on all the social medias. Those actions are huge support for the show. Until next week, keep the bugs off your glass and the bears off your back. Protect your peace. Focus on what you can control. And remember, drive truck, cash check. I'll see you at the next mile marker. Thank you. God bless.
The Mile Marker Mindset podcast is for informational, inspirational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. This podcast is not a substitute for professional or clinical advice. If you are in crisis or need immediate help, please visit milemarkermindset.com/crisis or call 911.